It was another miserable week. 4 weeks since the war started, and it's been pretty darn awful. Sadly for the bulls, the history of oil shocks is littered with bear markets. 20% drawdowns to say raise cash because it's almost never too late to sell something to protect yourself. Today was more of the same. Dow tumbling 793 points, S&P plunging 1.67%, NASDAQ plummeting 2.15%. It's a tough, rough road. My trust is the highest cash position I can recall. But you know what? It is never enough when you have horrendous action like this. It's almost impossible to predict what will happen in the war with Iran. We got to stop trying to do that. Right now, the one thing that's been consistently right is to buy oil stocks. Every time. Every time they're down. Every time they're up. It just doesn't matter because crude is headed higher. That means stocks are headed lower. It's one for one. Please don't overthink it. I say that on Letter X all the time. Hey, oil's down, stocks will be down. And they are. And it was another week when it paid to get out of anything in tech that used to be good. The stocks. The companies are still good, but not the stocks. They're all bad now, including the once loved, now disliked Nvidia, just 1 week after it showed you its best in-show greatness at GTC. I'm owning it. I'm not trading it, but I know it's going lower. I mean, look, people want proof. They want oil stocks. They don't mind the soda stocks, any pharma stock. And I got to tell you, they like the oil drillers. I mean, that's really it. Tech, nothing. Especially Nvidia, especially the really despised Microsoft. These are two of the greatest performers of all time, and they haven't been able to what we call catch a bid in what feels like ages. Until oil and interest rates, don't forget those, stop going higher, it really doesn't matter what those companies say or do. They are not going to get love from institutions and individuals, and I think they're beginning to realize that. So is there any hope near term? I mean, maybe there is. What we got to do, we got to go to the game plan for next week to figure this one out. Now, these days, Mondays revolve entirely around the war and ratcheting up in tension. We know that our president said there would be an extension of a bombing pause, but there's still hostilities, which to me means that oil goes higher. And when oil goes higher, we know that the stock market goes lower. I keep repeating that because I want people to be really understanding of what's driving the market down. It's gotten axiomatic, and I don't think it can change because the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. And Iran's missile and drone infrastructure is intact enough to keep it closed, even as we thought that wouldn't be the case by now. Worse, when the president pushed out his bombing deadline, something that would have at one time moved stocks up, it meant nothing. Why? Because oil still went higher, and nothing is more destructive for equities than higher oil prices, demonstrated again and again.
We've distanced ourselves from that 200-day. We've distanced ourselves now from 6,500 even. Just wondering, what the technical shelf is here that you're looking at.
It's interesting. I mean, if we had this conversation on Monday or Tuesday, I would have said, hey, keep an eye on that Monday low, that print that we put, I think it was around 64.73, right? Well, we broke through that today, and I think if you look at potential bounce levels from here, I think it really depends on kind of where we close today. If we can get back above that, great. But if not, I think Sam, I think 6,200 is really in focus because there's a couple things that happen there. That is the August low, and that's also kind of the intersection of some Fibonacci levels that some traders might be looking at for a short-term bounce. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think we've basically kind of given up 7 months and 7% of gains just in the matter of the last couple of weeks. So yeah, investors are frustrated. I get that. I think that, from what we're seeing in terms of equity trading, we haven't seen a ton of outflows, or we have seen a little bit more kind of a buildup in maybe some of the unloved stocks before. We're seeing buying in Nvidia. We're seeing some buying in Microsoft. And we're actually seeing some selling, which is interesting, in some of maybe the oil names, where the services companies right now, they're moving out of those. They're seeing a little bit more ETF buying, so a little bit more diversification from investors. And I think what's interesting about that is that kind of brings that correlation trade back into play, because for the longest time we've been talking about, hey, there's a small group of winners. And what happens a lot of times is during sell-offs, you see those correlations start to go up as investors look for more diversified type products.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at that chart that we had up alongside you, and it looks like we've just been taking the stairs slowly down this week, Joe. I'm just wondering, as we're on track for a fifth weekly loss here, In correction territory now on the S&P, you've got financials, discretionary, communication services, and tech. Utilities and energy obviously continue to outperform here as far as the sector performance is concerned. Is breadth deteriorating?
Yeah, no, you have less than 50% of the S&P 500 above the 200-day moving average. So yeah, it's deteriorating. It's lost a good percentage in terms of kind of where we were, just like I said, just a couple of months ago. It was probably about 6 weeks ago we were saying that there's more than 60% of the S&P above the 50-day moving average. And so you're right, Sam. It's been this kind of slow stair-step approach down. It may not feel that way, but it's kind of been that way, which is interesting to kind of see that we haven't had a flush. I look at that two ways, right? The bearish side of that is you don't really get capitulation until you see that flush. Now, from a technical standpoint, the RSI is down around 30 right now, so we're definitely getting close to that oversold, or maybe at that oversold territory in terms of maybe how some technicians would look at it. But we just haven't seen that one day, multi-percentage flush where traders just kind of throw their hands up in the air and say, I've had it. Or, you start seeing just a mass amount of margin calls and people are selling maybe not what they want to sell, but selling what they have to sell. It hasn't really felt that way yet. It's not to say that it can't happen. But, right now, oil is driving the market. And a couple things that you need to pay attention to is WTI hasn't shown any sign of slowing down. I mean, right now we're at the highs of the day. And you get the news coming out of the Middle East that bombing of the steel factory occurred and kind of what that could mean. And then here we go. We just got the University of Michigan consumer sentiment numbers that, hey, it showed that they were down. And what was interesting in my mind about that data was it was the 1-year inflation expectations have gone up. Now remember, these are still kind of old data. So the next one we'll have some of the more current. The last couple of weeks as we've seen energy prices go up. But honestly, what I thought was really interesting beyond the 1-year inflation was that the 5 to 7 hasn't really moved that much. So yes, investors are still kind of pricing in that this is maybe a shorter term conflict. I think we all hope that that's the case, but time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, people aren't feeling particularly great about the state of things right now because there's just so much uncertainty. But as far as these markets, I'm looking at the flow of funds for the week. Equity funds seeing the biggest outflow in 13 weeks. A lot of that driven by the US, $23.6 billion. Materials, the biggest outflow ever. Long-term bonds, biggest ever outflow since March 2020. What does it all tell you right now, particularly as we see this de-risking going into the weekend once again?
Well, it tells you that it's hard for investors to find a place where they can hide, right? I mean, traditionally, if you would have seen this type of equity outflows, you would have seen it move into fixed income and actually see fixed income do better. But there's really a couple things that are hitting the markets right now. The uncertainty around oil in the Middle East, which is hurting kind of higher beta names, as your previous guest was talking about. I agree with that 100%. But then also, what does that mean for inflation? So if we're not pricing in any type of Fed rate cut right now, and you're looking at bond yields continuing to go up, so now bonds aren't doing well, and now you're seeing central banks start to sell gold, so now that's pulling back. Now I think part of that is just that parabolic move that it had to the upside. I think that's the same reason that you saw the move in a lot of the memory and the flash names over the last couple of weeks, moving 25% in some of these names, even after stellar earnings, was just people are selling the winners, they're selling the parabolic moves that they've seen, and they're looking for some opportunities. I don't know, when that buying's going to start, but we've seen some of that transition. Like I said, we're definitely seeing some of the diversified ETF buying. But in terms of taking shots on some of the names that have pulled back, I think that might take a little bit of time before you really start seeing some of those big flows come back in.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we're actually seeing traders scooping up a little bit of memory and also EWY today, so South Korean exposure, which is interesting where we know a lot of that.
And you have said that the GPUs for everything era is maybe over. And so what does that mean for, say, like NVIDIA's moat as more and more of these AI ASIC players like Grok and Cerebras try to slot into inference?
Sure. Yes. So historically, NVIDIA was the first and they were the best and they were the only. We saw AMD come and try to play in the GPU space. But now at NVIDIA's GTC, and the narrative was always just like buy GPUs, they're the best for everything, they're the most flexible. Last week at GTC, NVIDIA and Jensen Huang showed that if you take LLM inference, which is the defining workload of our era, you can actually break it down into subtasks, if you want to think about it. For example, prefill and decode is what they call them. And you can run some of these workloads on GPUs, but actually to get really fast, like what they call ultra low latency and high interactivity for the user, so like really fast Claude coding, for example, you can actually slot in Grok chips and unlock this new performance level. And so, that sort of changes the dynamics, because if you can slot in Grok or Cerebras, it starts to say like, oh, who else could slot in here and why should it be NVIDIA? Now, NVIDIA, for their moat, they're trying to take it up a level higher and say, hey, it's not about the individual components, it's about the whole system, all of the racks put together, who can give you the best optimized inference across the whole system. So NVIDIA will continue to try to say, once you put it all together, it's our data center, everything branded NVIDIA that matters. Even if you slot in other people, we believe that we can optimize every little piece and still unlock the best inference.
All right.
A relatively broad-based decline. If you look at the S&P 500, almost, David, 4 stocks lower for every 1 stock that is higher. 110 stocks did advance in the S&P today. 391 stocks moved lower, though.
I look at the IMAC function on the Bloomberg terminal, see what's in green, what's in red. Energy, obviously the one that's shining greenest, the most verdant there on my screen. Energy up 1.87%, as we've been talking about on both radio and television over the course of the day in these last few weeks. Oil prices really animating all of this, and that concern about how high they can go, and of course what that duration variable is going to be.
All right, well, there's a little bit of green in the S&P 500. I went to that part of the IMAP function and found some gainers today. The biggest gainer on a percentage basis in the S&P 500 is Entergy today, up more than 6.8%. This is a result of a deal with Meta Platforms. It's paying for the construction of 7 new natural gas-fired plants to fuel its data center in rural Louisiana. Meta reaching a new agreement with Entergy to build and pay for enough gas plants to provide a total of 5.2 gigawatts of electricity for the data center. The agreement includes a Meta commitment to help fund up to 2.5 gigawatts of new renewable resources, as well as a memorandum of understanding to explore future development and use of nuclear power. Entergy up by 6.8%, the best performer on a percentage basis in the S&P 500. Among the best performers in there as well, I think it was actually the second best performer. That's right. Brown-Forman up again on news of a potential acquisition by Bernard Richaud. So look at that. Brown-Forman, controlled by the Brown family, up 5.6% today. It was up yesterday as a result of this as well. The big question is the family going to approve, because they do have voting power of shares? And finally, Peloton, a blast from the past.
Yes, indeed.
Out there.
Speaking of 2022.
I was on my Peloton this morning. What are you talking about? I was.
Okay.
Katie has an impressive Peloton streak.
Okay.
Yeah, it's quite the setup.
All right. Well, I don't know how to segue that into what the stock did today, but it's up 8.9%. This is actually the result of Eric Jackson out there on social media. It surged as much as 17% before giving back some of those gains, surging the most intraday going back to July. Eric Jackson, the activist investor, said he is long the stock. Here's what he said, quote, "I'm long Peloton at $4, he said in a post on X. Peloton shares at that point were down about 24% year to date. Up right now, though, or up today to $4.43 a share.
Wow.
So for decliners, I was very spoiled. I had a lot to choose from. We can start with Amazon. It's down by 4%. No specific news, but we do have the European Commission saying it was hit by a cyber attack that may have resulted in the theft of internal data. And the attack struck the Commission's Amazon Web Services, or AWS, account, so before being detected. So maybe that had something to do in part with the stock's decline. Up next is Coinbase. I wanted to talk about this because I wrote about this story yesterday about how Coinbase is teaming up with Better to really offer crypto mortgage. Tim will be interested in this too. Crypto mortgage to Americans. And now we have TD Cowen saying that the product is mixed. So that's not really that great. The advantage for the borrower is that they can obtain credit against Bitcoin holdings, the TD Cowen said, but it's still questionable how they will move forward with that. So we have Coinbase down by more than 7%. And lastly, we have cybersecurity stocks down, but I want to zero in on the ticker PANW. That's Palo Alto. Shares are in the red by 6%. it's joined by its peers CrowdStrike and Sailor dropped by almost double digits. So it's really because of a Fortune report about an artificial intelligence model being tested may be used by hackers.
All right, let's take a quick look at the bond market there because also spoiled for choice, though you did see an interesting steepening, which we were talking about with Jim Cramer. You can see the 2-year yields actually fell 8 basis points, a little bit of a rally in the short end of the curve, which was certainly interesting when you think about where we were after that ugly auction earlier in the week. Can't say the same for the rest of the curve, though. You saw a little bit of selling pressure deeper as you get further out the curve. 30-year yields higher by about 4 basis points. 10-year yields, we are back above 440. Tim, are you scared?
You know, I wouldn't say I'm scared.
Okay.
But what I will say is I wonder what the president's next move is, because yesterday after the sell-off, what we saw was a message from the president calling for an extension, and by many accounts, perhaps a third sort of extension. And the idea was that maybe this would give more time for negotiations, and markets bought it a little bit. But then this morning, with a seemingly increase in hostilities overnight and more strikes and strikes on infrastructure as well, markets are not buying the idea that there is a sort of an off-ramp anytime soon. I mean, look no further than oil prices. You have Brent right now up above $113 a barrel, WTI hitting $100 a barrel. That's up close to 6% right now, and Brent up, Isabel, what? Almost 5% today.
It's really been wild in the oil market, but I'm wondering if we're a victim of our own quant system, algo system, or just our own fear. Citi released a note this week saying that selling off on Friday and buying back on Monday has been a recurring pattern over the past few weeks because investors are just really wary of carrying risk over the weekend because maybe they want to have a nice brunch session or hang out with their kids, but they buy the dip.
Bloomberg
Thank you so much,
early
Katie. I
next
appreciate
week.
that.
So
Yes.
I feel like that's really maybe something we're seeing. Citi also said conviction has been low because, of course, it's a headline-driven market, and it's really been tough to figure out this narrative.